The fluorescent lights flickered in the empty SETI laboratory as Lee Kwan slouched in his chair, absently picking at a slice of cold pepperoni pizza. The night shift was always quiet, but tonight felt especially lonely. The soft hum of computers and the occasional beep from monitoring equipment were his only companions. Kwan had been staring at data streams for so long that the numbers were starting to blur together. He rubbed his tired eyes and reached for his fourth cup of coffee, now cold and bitter. The digital clock on the wall showed 3:17 a.m., and he still had hours to go before his shift ended. Just as he was about to doze off, something unusual caught his eye. At first, he thought he was seeing things, lack of sleep playing tricks on his mind. But there it was, a pattern in the data that looked nothing like the usual cosmic background noise they monitored. "That's weird," he muttered, sitting up straight and adjusting his glasses. The signal had a structure to it, almost like packets of information. He ran it through their standard analysis programs, but none of them could make sense of it. The pattern was too regular to be natural, yet unlike anything in their database. Kwan's hands flew across the keyboard as he refined the signal. The more he cleaned it up, the clearer it became that this was no ordinary transmission. The data clusters reminded him of something familiar. They looked almost exactly like social media posts, complete with what appeared to be reaction markers and threaded responses. His heart started racing. Could this be it? The thing every SETI researcher dreamed of but never really expected to find. He needed to be sure before raising any alarms. One false alert could end his career. For the next hour, he meticulously checked and rechecked his equipment. He ran diagnostics, calibrated the receivers, and even went up to the roof to inspect the satellite dishes. Everything was working perfectly. The signal was real. With trembling fingers, he picked up his phone and called Dr. Kim Hana, his supervisor. It rang 5 times before a groggy voice answered. "This better be good, Kwan. Do you know what time it is?" "Dr. Kim, I'm sorry to wake you, but you need to see this. I found something unusual." "Unusual how?" She sounded more alert now. "I think," he paused, still barely believing it himself, "I think we might be picking up alien social media." There was a long silence on the other end. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't touch anything." True to her word, Dr. Kim arrived at the lab in record time, her hair hastily tied back and wearing mismatched shoes. She hadn't even bothered with makeup, which told Kwan just how seriously she was taking this call. As Kwan showed her the data, Dr. Kim's expression changed from skepticism to amazement. She called in the rest of the team, and within hours, the normally quiet lab was buzzing with activity. Researchers huddled around monitors, talking in excited whispers as they analyzed the signal from every possible angle. "Look at this structure," Dr. Kim pointed to a repeating pattern. "It's definitely a communication protocol of some kind. But the scale, this isn't just a simple transmission. This is an entire network." As they dug deeper, they realized they had stumbled upon something massive. They weren't just picking up random alien broadcasts. They had somehow gained access to what appeared to be the Galactic Empire's version of the Internet. The breakthrough came when one of the junior researchers noticed that the signal strength increased when they pointed their receivers toward the Arcturus star system. They adjusted their equipment accordingly, and suddenly the data became much clearer. "It's like we accidentally found their Wi-Fi password," Kwan joked, but nobody laughed. They were too busy processing the implications of what they had discovered. The lab's atmosphere grew tense as they realized the magnitude of their discovery. This wasn't just first contact. They had stumbled upon an entire civilization's public communications network. The data streaming across their screens contained everything from what appeared to be news broadcasts to personal messages between alien beings. Dr. Kim gathered everyone in the main conference room as dawn began to break. "Nobody breathes a word of this to anyone outside this room," she ordered. "Not your families, not your friends, not even other departments. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we go public." But as they would soon discover, they weren't the only ones who had noticed the connection. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, in the heart of the Galactic Empire, alarms were already going off as their systems detected an unauthorized access point from a previously unknown civilization. Quan sat back in his chair, still trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. His ordinary night shift had turned into humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization, and it had happened completely by accident. He looked down at his half-eaten slice of pizza, now cold and forgotten, and couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of what would become the most remarkable and hilarious first contact scenario in the history of both Earth and the Galactic Empire. Deep within the glittering crystal spires of the Imperial Communications Center, Park Jin sat at his command station, surrounded by holographic displays showing the Empire's vast information network. As Chief Communications Officer, he took pride in maintaining the most secure and efficient data network in the known galaxy. That's why the small red alert in the corner of his screen bothered him so much. At first, he thought it was a routine system glitch. The Empire's network occasionally picked up random signals from developing civilizations, usually just radio waves or primitive digital broadcasts. But this was different. Someone, or something, had actually managed to connect to their network. "Run a full diagnostic," he ordered, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls. The results made him sit up straight in his chair. This wasn't just a random connection. An entire planet's worth of data was beginning to pour into their systems. Park Jin watched in growing bewilderment as his screens filled with strange images and videos. There were humans, at least he assumed they were humans, doing synchronized dances, making strange faces at recording devices, and sharing images with text overlaid on them. "Get me a full analysis team in here now," he commanded into his communicator. Within minutes, his office was filled with the Empire's top data analysts, all staring at the streams of Earth content with a mixture of confusion and fascination. Song Mei, his most trusted assistant, coordinated the team's efforts to make sense of this flood of information. Their initial assumption was that they were seeing official diplomatic communications from Earth's government. After all, why else would a civilization broadcast such carefully choreographed messages? "Sir," Song Mai called out, her face serious as she studied her findings. "We've identified several recurring patterns in their communications. The most prominent platform appears to be something called TikTok. Based on its widespread use and the formal nature of the performances, we believe this must be their primary method of governmental communication." Park Jin nodded thoughtfully, watching as another analyst cataloged something called a meme. The humans seemed to use these images with text as some sort of sophisticated symbolic language. "There's more, sir," Song Mai continued, bringing up a collection of images. "These small furry creatures called cats appear in a statistically significant number of their messages. They must hold great diplomatic importance." The analysis team worked through the night, becoming increasingly confused by their findings. They watched humans dumping ice water on themselves, participating in elaborate dance challenges, and sharing endless variations of something called Rick Astley. Could this be some sort of encryption? One analyst suggested, rewatching a video of a cat knocking objects off a table for the 10th time. Perhaps these are coded messages. Park Jin rubbed his temples, trying to make sense of it all. The sheer volume of content was overwhelming. Humans seemed to be constantly broadcasting, sharing every aspect of their lives. But why? What was the purpose? "Sir," Song Mai interrupted his thoughts, "you need to see this." She projected a new video showing thousands of humans gathering in strange costumes, many dressed as characters from their entertainment media. "We believe this might be some sort of governmental assembly. They call it a convention." The situation became even more complex when they discovered something called Twitter. The analysts spent hours trying to decipher the meaning behind humans arguing about which foods belonged on other foods, and why something called pineapple on pizza caused such diplomatic tensions. These must be our philosophical debates, one team member suggested. Look how passionately they defend their positions. As the day wore on, Park Jin realized he needed to report this to his superiors. How could he explain that they had discovered a civilization that seemed to communicate primarily through short videos, pictures of cats, and endlessly repeated jokes? Prepare a full report, he ordered Song Mai. Focus on their apparent governmental structures. These influencers seem to hold positions of great authority, and these viral challenges must be some form of population control or social organization. Song Mai nodded, though he could see the uncertainty in her eyes. None of their training had prepared them for this type of first contact scenario. The Empire's protocols were designed for formal diplomatic communications, not whatever this was. As Park Jin prepared to brief the Imperial Council, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. Surely a civilization capable of accessing their network must have more traditional forms of communication. But as more data poured in, showing humans performing elaborate pranks, sharing pictures of their meals, and arguing about fictional characters, he became less and less certain. Little did he know that his team's misinterpretation of human internet culture would set in motion a chain of events that would change both civilizations forever. As he finalized his report, recommending immediate diplomatic contact with this bizarre but fascinating species, Park Jin couldn't help but wonder what other surprises Earth had in store for them. The massive Imperial flagship, Star Whisper, emerged from hyperspace in a brilliant flash of light, its crystalline hull gleaming in Earth's sunlight. Ambassador Bei Sung stood on the bridge, dressed in his finest ceremonial robes, which had been specially designed to reflect the cultural significance of Earth's most popular communication methods. His staff had spent weeks preparing for this moment, studying thousands of Earth's viral transmissions to craft the perfect diplomatic response. The ambassador himself had memorized hundreds of what they believed to be Earth's most important philosophical statements, including something called, "This is the way," and "It's Wednesday, my dudes." As they descended through Earth's atmosphere, following the coordinates provided for their landing at the United Nations, Bai Sung rehearsed his opening speech one last time. He had carefully incorporated references to Earth's apparent obsession with cats, complete with several meow sounds that his linguistic team assured him would demonstrate proper respect. The flagship settled gracefully in the designated landing area, its anti-gravity systems causing barely a ripple in the air. Through the view screen, Bai Sung could see a gathering of humans waiting to greet them, but something seemed off. "Where are the cats?" he whispered to his chief advisor. "And why aren't they filming themselves?" As the landing ramp descended, Bai Sung and his diplomatic corps emerged with practiced precision. They had rehearsed their entrance to match the rhythm of something called Gangnam Style, which they believed was Earth's most formal ceremonial dance. Instead of the expected response, the assembled human diplomats just stared at them in confusion as the imperial delegation began their carefully choreographed routine. The situation became even more awkward when Bai Sung noticed a group of teenagers near the UN building performing their own dance for something called social media. He watched in growing horror as he realized these young humans weren't government officials at all. They were just regular citizens making content for entertainment. This cannot be right," Bai Sung muttered, his confidence crumbling as he faced the UN Security Council. His carefully prepared speech about the deeper meaning of rickrolling and its implications for intergalactic diplomacy suddenly seemed ridiculous. "Distinguished representatives of Earth," he began, his translator device converting his words to multiple human languages. "We come in peace and wish to acknowledge your profound philosophical discourse about a man who will never give you up or let you down." The blank stares from the assembled diplomats made him trail off. Someone in the back of the room stifled a laugh. A human diplomat stepped forward, introducing herself as the UN Secretary General. "Ambassador Bai," she said politely, "while we appreciate your unique approach to diplomacy, I believe there may have been some misunderstanding about our communications." Bai Sung's assistant whispered urgently in his ear, "Sir, Our cultural analysis team may have made some incorrect assumptions about Earth's social media platforms. The ambassador felt his face flush purple, the imperial equivalent of blushing, as he realized their months of preparation had been based on a fundamental misunderstanding of human culture. All those hours spent studying what they thought were official diplomatic transmissions had actually been entertainment content. Things got even more complicated when his staff began presenting their diplomatic gifts, a collection of what they believed to be Earth's most treasured artifacts, including a keyboard cat statue, a collection of preserved memes, and a ceremonial rickroll device that would play "Never Gonna Give You Up" at diplomatic functions. The human diplomats tried their best to maintain their composure, but Bae-sung could see them struggling to keep straight faces. His carefully crafted image of Earth's sophisticated meme-based civilization was crumbling by the second. In a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, he switched to what they had analyzed as Earth's secondary diplomatic language, emoji hieroglyphics. The sight of a distinguished alien ambassador solemnly displaying a series of smiling faces, hearts, and eggplant symbols finally broke the tension in the room. The UN Secretary-General was the first to laugh, a warm, genuine sound that somehow made everything better. Soon, both human and imperial diplomats were laughing together at the absurdity of the situation. "Perhaps," Bae-sung said, allowing himself to smile, "we should start over. It seems we have much to learn about each other's cultures." As the formal introductions began again, this time without choreographed dances or meme references, Bae-sung couldn't help but think that this misunderstanding might actually lead to something wonderful. After all, any species that could laugh at themselves couldn't be too different from his own. Meanwhile, outside the UN building, the teenagers who had been making their dance video had no idea they had just witnessed one of the most important moments in human history. They were too busy trying to figure out how to include the weird sparkly spaceship in their background without making it look photoshopped. Li Ji sat in her vast office at the Imperial Academy of Culture, surrounded by holographic displays showing thousands of Earth transmissions. As the Empire's leading xenolinguist, she had decoded 17 alien languages in her career, but nothing had prepared her for the complexity of human internet culture. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? She read aloud from her latest translation. Because he was outstanding in his field. She frowned, checked her calculations again, and then suddenly burst out laughing as she understood the dual meaning. Her assistant poked his head through the door, concerned by the unusual sound. Laughter wasn't common in the hallowed halls of the academy, especially not from the usually serious Professor Lee. "I'm fine," she assured him, wiping tears from her eyes. "It's just, humans have this fascinating form of wordplay they call dad jokes. They're simultaneously terrible and wonderful." As she delved deeper into Earth's content, Li Ji discovered that human humor wasn't just entertainment. It was an art form. Their ability to find comedy in everyday situations, to play with language, and to create shared cultural jokes was unlike anything in imperial society. The turning point came when she presented her first report to the Imperial Council. She had prepared a serious academic analysis of human communication patterns, but included a few examples of memes and jokes to illustrate her points. The sight of the normally stoic council members trying to maintain their dignity while looking at pictures of cats with humorous captions was something she would never forget. Word spread quickly through the Empire's communication networks. Citizens began sharing translated Earth content, attempting to recreate human-style jokes in their own language. The Imperial Academy's servers nearly crashed from the number of people requesting access to Earth's meme database. Professor Lee, her department head, called during an emergency meeting. "We're receiving thousands of applications for a new course in human humor studies. The engineering faculty is asking how to adapt our holographic technology to recreate something called GFs." Li Ji watched in amazement as the rigid structure of imperial society began to shift. Young Imperials started their own version of meme culture, creating image macros featuring common frustrations of imperial life. A picture of an overloaded quantum processor with the caption, "This is fine, became particularly popular. The dad jokes phenomenon spread like wildfire. Imperial parents began competing to make their children groan with terrible puns. Why don't quantum physicists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. Became a favorite in the science ministry. The cultural ministry, initially concerned about this disruption to imperial dignity, decided to embrace the trend. They announced the first ever Galactic Meme Recreation Contest, hoping to channel this new energy into something they could control. Li Ji found herself appointed as head judge, reviewing thousands of entries as Imperials attempted to blend their own culture with Earth's humor. The winning entry, a recreation of the woman yelling at cat meme, featuring an Imperial Council member arguing with a quantum cat, a common Imperial pet, would later be enshrined in the Imperial Museum of Cultural Achievement. What's happening to our society? A concerned council member asked during a private meeting with Li Ji. She considered the question carefully before responding. "We're learning to laugh," she said simply. "Humans have shown us that finding humor in life doesn't diminish our dignity. It enhances our understanding of existence." As she continued her translations, Li Ji discovered layers of complexity in human humor that even humans themselves might not have recognized. The way they used humor to cope with stress, to build connections, and to make sense of their world was remarkably sophisticated. Her team began categorizing different types of Earth humor: sarcasm, irony, slapstick, puns, and the endlessly fascinating world of internet memes. Each category required its own translation protocol, considering not just the words but the cultural context that made them funny. The Empire's citizens took to some forms of humor more naturally than others. Puns worked well across cultures, while sarcasm proved more challenging. The concept of trolling had to be carefully explained to prevent diplomatic incidents. Late one night, as Li Ji reviewed another batch of translations, she came across a simple joke. What did the alien say to the human? "Take me to your laughter." She smiled, appreciating how this once silly Earth joke had become an unexpectedly accurate description of their current situation. The Imperial Academy's halls, once silent except for the sound of serious academic discourse, now regularly echoed with laughter. Students discussed meme theory with the same intensity they once reserved for quantum mechanics. Even the ancient portraits of former Academy leaders seemed to smile more than before. As she prepared for another day of translations, Li Ji realized that she wasn't just translating words or jokes. She was helping to translate joy itself from one civilization to another. The Empire was changing, one laugh at a time, and she had the best seat in the galaxy to watch it happen. Imperial High Commander Choi Da stood rigidly in the grand banquet hall, his ceremonial robes perfectly pressed, every medal and decoration precisely aligned. The first official diplomatic dinner between Earth and the Empire needed to be perfect. Centuries of tradition and protocol would be observed, as they always had been. The massive crystalline chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across the gathered dignitaries, humans in their formal attire on one side, imperial officials in their traditional robes on the other. Choi Da had personally approved every detail, from the arrangement of the quantum-stabilized silverware to the exact height of each chair. Remember, he had instructed his staff, "We must maintain absolute decorum. The Empire's dignity must be preserved at all costs." The Earth ambassador, a woman named Sarah Chen, seemed to be having trouble keeping still in her chair. She kept making eye contact with her colleagues and smiling, something that made Choi Da slightly nervous. The briefings had warned about humans' tendency toward informal behavior, but surely they would respect the solemnity of this occasion. The first course arrived with perfect precision. Floating plates guided by anti-gravity fields, each landing simultaneously before the gathered guests. Choi Da allowed himself a small measure of satisfaction. Everything was proceeding according to protocol. Then it happened. One of the junior Earth diplomats turned to his imperial table companion and asked, "Do you know why the cookie went to the doctor?" The imperial official blinked all three of his eyes in confusion. Was the cookie ill? Because it was feeling crumbly. A snort of laughter escaped from another Imperial official, who immediately tried to cover it with a cough. Choi Dai shot him a warning glare, but the damage was done. The humans, encouraged by this response, began sharing more of these puns. "What do you call an alien with 3 eyes?" asked another Earth diplomat, looking directly at her 3-eyed Imperial dining companion, an alien. This time, several Imperial officials couldn't contain their amusement. Choi Dai watched in horror as centuries of carefully maintained dignity began to crack. He tried to restore order by loudly clearing his throat, but it was too late. The Earth ambassador caught his eye and smiled warmly. "Commander Choi, why don't aliens like yard sales?" "Because the prices are astronomical." The play on words hit him like a quantum blast. He tried to maintain his composure, his face twitching with the effort to remain serious. But something inside him, something that had been bound by protocol and tradition for his entire life, finally broke free. A laugh escaped his lips, at first just a small chuckle, then growing into a full, deep belly laugh that echoed through the hall. The sound was so unexpected, so contrary to everything the Imperial Court stood for, that the entire room fell silent for a moment. Then, like a dam breaking, the laughter spread. Imperial officials who had never so much as smiled in public were suddenly doubling over with mirth. The ancient protocols that had governed imperial behavior for centuries crumbled in minutes. "Oh, oh," called out an imperial minister between fits of laughter. "I think I understand now. Let me try." He stood up, still giggling. "What do you call an imperial quantum physicist who can't find his particles?" Atom-minded. The humans burst into appreciative laughter, more at the attempt than the execution, and the imperial officials joined in, their formal robes now wrinkled from shaking with laughter. Choi Dai watched as his perfectly orchestrated diplomatic dinner descended into what could only be described as a cosmic comedy club. Imperial nobles were trading jokes with Earth diplomats, their attempts at wordplay becoming progressively worse but somehow funnier. The kitchen staff, hearing the unprecedented sounds of joy from the dining hall, cautiously peeked in. They found their supreme commander, tears of laughter streaming down his face as he attempted to tell his own joke. Why did the space cookie go to the doctor? Because it was feeling meteor. It wasn't particularly good, but the entire hall erupted in fresh peals of laughter. The kitchen staff joined in, sharing jokes they had heard from the human internet. Even the automated serving robots seemed to bob up and down in something resembling amusement. As the evening wore on, the formal seating arrangement dissolved. Humans and Imperials mingled freely, sharing stories and jokes, their initial awkwardness forgotten in shared laughter. Looking around at the joyful chaos, Choi Dai realized something important. In all of his years of serving the Empire, of maintaining its rigid protocols and traditions, he had never seen his people so genuinely happy, so truly connected with each other and their guests. By the end of the night, the grand diplomatic dinner had turned into something unprecedented in imperial history, a party. The humans had taught them something more valuable than any trade agreement or military alliance. They had taught them how to laugh. As the last guests departed, still chuckling over the evening's jokes, Choi Dai made a decision. He would recommend to the Imperial Council that humor be officially recognized as a vital component of diplomatic relations. After all, he thought with a smile, how could you possibly go to war with someone who had made you Lok Yoon, as sat in his meditation chamber aboard the Imperial Philosophy Station, surrounded by floating holographic displays, showing the latest data on human humor's impact across the Empire. As a prominent Imperial philosopher, he had spent centuries contemplating the nature of existence, but nothing had prepared him for the cultural earthquake that Earth's discovery had triggered. His latest paper, Humans, Chaos Incarnate or Comic Geniuses, had started as a serious academic study. However, as he wrote it, he found himself adding jokes and humorous observations, something unthinkable in traditional imperial academic writing. To his surprise, this made his work more engaging, not less scholarly. The humans have not merely taught us to laugh, he wrote in his conclusion. They have taught us to see the universe itself as a cosmic joke, and somehow this makes it more wonderful, not less. The paper spread through Imperial society like wildfire. Within days of its publication, it had been downloaded more times than all other academic works in Imperial history combined. Discussion groups formed spontaneously across thousands of worlds to debate its implications. On the ancient planet of Rim Xii, where the Empire's most solemn ceremonies had been performed for millennia, something extraordinary was happening. The planet's high ceremonialist, keeper of sacred traditions, had read Yunhe's paper and made an unprecedented decision. If laughter is indeed a path to enlightenment, she announced to her shocked council, then we must embrace it fully. And so, the galaxy's first comedy festival was born in the most unlikely of places. The festival preparations transformed Rim Xii, the ancient ceremonial amphitheater, which had never hosted anything but the most serious rituals, was retrofitted with lighting systems designed to enhance comedic timing. The sacred meditation gardens were converted into casual meeting spaces where beings from across the galaxy could share jokes and stories. Earth's best stand-up comedians were invited to perform. They arrived to find themselves treated like spiritual leaders, with Imperial citizens hanging on their every word, trying to understand the subtle art of humor. The impact rippled across Imperial society. Young Imperials began challenging traditional norms through humor. Comedy clubs appeared in every major city. Imperial fashion, once restricted to formal robes and muted colors, exploded with creativity as people began wearing shirts with humorous slogans and images. Even the Imperial education system changed. Schools began teaching humor appreciation alongside traditional subjects. Students learned about different types of jokes, the history of human comedy, and the psychological benefits of laughter. Yunhe watched all this with fascination, continuing to document the transformation in his research. He observed how humor began to influence imperial politics, with candidates now expected to show a sense of humor during campaigns. The ability to tell a good joke became as important as understanding quantum economics. The most dramatic change came in imperial family life. Parents and children, once bound by strict formal protocols, began sharing jokes and playing together. Family dinners, traditionally silent affairs focused on proper etiquette, became lively gatherings filled with laughter and storytelling. Some traditionalists resisted, of course. They claimed that humor would undermine imperial authority and lead to chaos. But their warnings fell flat when even the imperial supreme leader began ending his speeches with jokes. Back on Rim Xii, the comedy festival exceeded all expectations. Beings from across the galaxy gathered to share in the joy of laughter. The sight of serious imperial philosophers rolling with laughter at human stand-up routines became a symbol of the new era. One particular moment captured the transformation perfectly. During a performance, a human comedian accidentally tripped and fell on stage. In the past, such a loss of dignity would have been scandalous. Instead, the comedian turned it into an impromptu physical comedy routine, and the audience of imperial dignitaries laughed so hard that the ancient amphitheater's quantum stabilizers had to be adjusted. Yunhe was there to witness it all. He saw how the laughter broke down barriers between species, ranks, and cultures. In his follow-up paper, he wrote, "Humor has accomplished what millennia of diplomacy could not. It has made us truly see each other as equals in the cosmic joke of existence." The revolution wasn't just cultural. It was psychological and spiritual. Imperial meditation practices began incorporating laughter yoga. The ancient imperial art of quantum calligraphy evolved to include humorous elements. Even the traditional imperial greeting, once a formal bow, began to include a shared smile. As Yunhe completed his observations, he realized that the empire hadn't just learned to laugh. It had learned to live. The rigid perfection they had strived for over millennia had been replaced by something more authentic, more joyful, and ultimately more meaningful. In his personal diary, He wrote what would later become the most quoted line in Imperial history. The humans didn't conquer us with weapons or technology. They conquered us with joy, and we are grateful for our defeat. The Empire would never be the same, and nobody wanted it to be. They had discovered something far more valuable than dignity. They had discovered happiness. The Grand Imperial Hall of Harmony glittered with the light of 1,000 stars as Kim Do took the stage. The famous Earth comedian had become something of a legend in the Empire, known for teaching even the most serious Imperial officials how to laugh. Today, she was about to make history. Behind her stood a massive holographic display showing live feeds from thousands of worlds across the galaxy, all tuned in to witness this historic moment. Earth was about to be officially declared the Great Teachers of Joy, a title that would have seemed absurd just a few years ago. Kim Do looked out at the assembled dignitaries, humans and Imperials sitting side by side, all traces of their former formality gone. Her fellow comedian Yoon Sun gave her a thumbs up from the front row, where she sat next to an Imperial Council member who was wearing a t-shirt with a cat meme printed on it. When I was a kid, Kim Do began, I got in trouble for making jokes in class. Today, I'm making jokes in front of the entire galaxy, and it's part of my job description. The crowd laughed, the sound echoing through the hall and across the countless worlds watching the broadcast. The Imperial Council had changed dramatically since first contact. Their traditional chamber, once a place of solemn deliberation, now featured a meme of the day display. The council members had learned that serious matters could be discussed more effectively with a touch of humor. The ceremony proceeded with a perfect blend of dignity and joy. Ambassador Ba, who had come so far from his first awkward attempts at understanding human humor, approached the ancient ceremonial table with a smile. As he prepared to sign the historic document, someone in the back of the room whispered just loud enough to be heard, "Why did the alien cross the galaxy? To get to the other side." The resulting laughter was so loud that the quantum sensors on nearby ships registered it as a disturbance. The old Ambassador Ba would have been mortified. The new Ambassador Ba laughed the loudest of all. Professor Kang Min, now the head of the newly established Department of Interstellar Humor Studies at the Imperial Academy, watched the proceedings with satisfaction. When reporters asked him about humanity's role in the galaxy, he gave an answer that would be quoted in history books for generations to come. "We didn't conquer the stars with weapons or technology," he said, smiling. "We did it with cat videos and dad jokes. And somehow, that makes perfect sense." The impact of Earth's influence could be seen everywhere. Imperial ships now had entertainment decks where comedy shows ran continuously. The ancient Imperial communication network had been upgraded to handle the massive amount of memes being shared across the galaxy. Even the Imperial military had added joke-telling to their training programs, finding that it improved unit cohesion and problem-solving abilities. The ceremony reached its climax as the Imperial Council formally added LOL to their official diplomatic lexicon. The ancient Book of Protocol, a document that hadn't been modified in thousands of years, was updated to include an entire section on appropriate use of human humor in diplomatic settings. As the ceremony concluded, Kim Do and Yoon Sun led the assembled dignitaries in what had become a galaxy-wide tradition, the telling of the worst dad joke they could think of. The groans and laughter that followed were a symphony of joy that represented everything their two civilizations had achieved together. Later that evening, at the celebration party, beings from across the galaxy shared stories and jokes, each adding their own cultural twist to humor. An Imperial quantum physicist told a joke about Schrödinger's cat that had both humans and Imperials rolling in the aisles. The party continued long into the night, but the real celebration was happening across the galaxy. On countless worlds, in countless homes, beings gathered around screens to watch the ceremony and share in the joy. Parents told jokes to their children, friends shared memes, and everywhere, laughter echoed through the stars. As the Earth delegation prepared to return home, they received one final surprise. The Imperial Council had commissioned a massive statue for Earth's capital, a giant bronze cat wearing an imperial robe with a plaque that read, "To the species that taught the galaxy to laugh." Looking up at the stars that night, Professor Kane Min reflected on how far they had come. The Empire had gained something far more valuable than territory or technology. They had gained the ability to find joy in the universe and share it with others. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, on a small blue planet that had changed the galaxy with laughter, a young comedian was preparing for their first intergalactic tour, ready to carry on the tradition of bringing joy to the stars. The universe would never be the same, and that was the best joke of all.